Vedana, feeling. It's a very primary source of intelligence. How we sense anything, how things first impact. Vedana, feeling. Something contacts, feeling arises. Vedana is associated with Veda. Veda is the classical Indian word for the knowledges, the great knowledges, for Vedas. Vedana is that which enables you to know. This is not intellectual knowledge or intellectual intelligence, it's much more about that which moves you, that which penetrates, that which moves you. And this is considered more important than intellectual knowledge. Intellectual knowledge is about something. That 6 and 6 equals 12. So what? Vedana is about that which touches you and moves you. You know. So it's not something to be trivialized, because it's really, the mainspring of our motivations and actions, our reflexes, at least the reflexive effect. Otherwise, no feeling. You don't know anything. You don't really know anything apart from some ideas. Empty. But whenever contact occurs, there's feeling. So even the contact of thought feels like something. Thought could be interesting, exciting, pleasant feeling. It can be associated with despair, miserable feeling. We can enjoy the bounce and the speed of thought, can seem very exciting, and that gives a pleasant feeling. Or when the thought won't work, you can't figure something out, the mind is staggering, unpleasant feeling. So, so all the senses, including the mind, direct contact with the citta is feeling. So it's sight, sound, and so forth. Direct contact is citta. Contacts the citta is feeling. But actually sight, sound, and smell, hearing don't actually contact the citta. They contact the mind, manas, manovinyana, which then interprets that sight or sound as agreeable, and then the pleasant feeling arises. So really you only have two bases. Mind base, manovinyana, mind consciousness, and then body base, immediate, tactile. So because these are where we get the signals that direct our lives. And the body base is very immediate, and that directs our life immediately in terms of security or threat or pleasure or pain. That's the way it's supposed to be, because then we get an immediate reaction, jump away or grab something. So this body can bypass the thinking mind because it's got to act very quickly, so bodily very sensitive to feeling. The mind has to, wait a minute, is that good or bad? Doesn't look so good to me. A little bit of, so that's called arriving at a perception, which means there's an interpretation. This means that. That means, that gesture means threatening, or that gesture means friendly. And then we get the feeling. So the mind acts as the interpreter of experience, and then feeling button gets pushed, and then the reaction occurs, response occurs. So that's the system, but of course it's not always accurate. Particularly mental feeling, bodily feeling, something lands on you. Oh no, it's just a fly. It's not a wasp. It's just a fly. So you get that impact, but no, nothing much. Mental feeling, because it's to do with an interpretation of something, it's much more risky. Looks like pleasant, but is it? Is that food really nice, or is it just a piece of plastic? So the perception is a guesswork, based upon past experience. This is where we get a lot of prejudice and bias, because we see the present through the mind. The mind reviews the present in terms of the past. It's stored up memories. So, we can see people, see faces, and interpret that as friendly or unfriendly, depending on what we've learned in the past. Of course, even more so voice tones. Even more so what people represent. She reminds me of my mother. Could be an agreeable feeling, could be a disagreeable feeling. But that person's not actually your mother, he just looks like her. So, we can have these interpretations. We don't even really recognize them. That, that we're responding to a perception, not the actual thing in itself. But that's the way it goes. The way the perception based feeling, perception, feeling. Then what happens next? You get some response. It's called sankhara. There's an activation. We get excited, we get happy, we get disappointed, we feel nervous, we feel, I don't feel comfortable here, don't like the way she's behaving. Agitation. This activation, something starts stirring. Sankhara. And these sankharas, again, will be learned. They're established on past strategies, how to avoid something, how to, avoid something that's happening. A little bit of defensive strategy or avoidance strategy, how to manage this. These are not intellectually learned, they're reflexes. Based upon the past. But they get embedded. They become established. So just remember, some of this is very tragic, really. I remember an occasion we had a young man who became a monk, and he'd been living in the Balkans. Balkans is an area of Europe north of Greece, where there's been a lot of wars and conflict and bombing. So he lived in this area. So there was always bombs going off and people killing. So his whole system was tuned to defense and escaping. And so if we had a Sangha meeting, he could only manage to be in the meeting if he could sit in a corner away from the group with 2 walls on either side of him, so he felt safe. Sit in the corner where the two walls met, so he got a wall on either side of him and he could sit back there. Otherwise, the system would just not settle down, he'd just feel too agitated. And this, unfortunately, this kind of thing is not uncommon. So people who've been in wars, and soldiers generally have some kind of traumatic stress, where they have difficult nights, can't sleep, or the sound of something bangs, and they hit the floor. They hear a plane going overhead and they duck, because those sounds immediately trigger this reflex of defense and escape. The sound, immediately perception, feeling, sankhara. So this is common in various forms and other. People feel frightened walking down the street at night because, don't feel comfortable. And, so you only have to have one or two powerful events that trigger a powerful feeling, and the system knows that and embeds a defense, escape strategy, because this is a matter of life and death, isn't it? And for other cases it can be less so. We've been difficult situations where we've been perhaps brought up in households where there was a lot of abusive behavior. People learn to be timid, defensive, fearful. That's the way you survive. And of course, can go the other way. We've been in situations with a lot of generosity, safety, trust, warm-heartedness. People naturally feel quite comfortable with being with others. They enjoy other people's company. It's a feeling of, oh, this is beautiful. Don't want to be on my own. I want to be with these other people. Feel more comfortable like that. And it's particularly associated with village cultures where every child belongs to the whole village. So people and the little ones feel comfortable wherever they are. I remember one time we had a katina, I think it was a katina at Amaravati, and there were that many individual rooms, these long halls which are dormitories, so people sleep 10, 15 people in a hall, and there's a few single rooms. So we thought, oh dear, I'm going to get a single room. So we've got a few people in the single rooms, and other people had to share the hall. And there's this Cambodian group turned up, and so some people got single rooms. The people in the single room said, I don't want to be here on my own. So they all joined in the big group rooms, where there's about 30 people in the room, feeling very happy just to be with each other. So that's where they felt most happy. But often we find in Western situations, people feel they want to be on their own room. So they feel more comfortable like that. And we had a Thai lay supporter, and she wanted to ask that she could do a retreat in one of our kutis in the forest. The kuti's only, 2.5 meters by 2 meters. It's not huge, maybe 2.5 by 2.5. So she went to this kuti, she brought a friend with her. They sit at the other end of each end, facing the wall at other ends of the kuti. They could just enjoy each other's company. And generally, for Westerners, that would be quite a challenge to share that space with another person. But the perception was feeling more happy, sharing, and a bit more sort of lonely. Lonely, don't like that. I mean, generally the theme for our Western monks is, I just want to get off and be on my own. I want to get peace and quiet, be on my own, feel more comfortable like that. You think, wow, this is quite embedded cultural reactions. So we had one of the monks, he was, lived in a boarding school, boarding schools in Britain where you a whole load of boys and you had to share a dorm. You're stuck in this school for, I don't know, 40 weeks of the year with all these other boys. And you've got to get up at the same time, go to the lessons, go to exercise at the same time, eat the meal at the same time, get back in the dormitory at the same time, lights out at the same time. You're all stuck there with each other. With teachers going around making sure you behave yourself. So the idea of sharing a room with somebody else is not a very comfortable idea, because you get that sense of trapped with people I don't really want to be with. Nobody wants to be here because it means a loss of freedom. Yeah. So both these, you can understand both of them. They're interpretations, fundamental interpretations, sankharas. But you don't want to let them rule your life. Ideally, you want to be adaptable. So with people, fine. Without people, fine. That's okay. Easy. But you can't just change a sankhara as an act of will. You can suppress it, but some of these are just basic reflexes. So we, And even more significant is the ones that tell us who we are. Well, this is sankhara. This is also sankhara, the mental formation. And so that's, what does that do? What does it do? It doesn't say, are you feeling comfortable? Are you okay? Is anything needed to help? It generally says, did you do this right or did you do that right? Are you doing it right now? Or you got it wrong? Perhaps it should be something better than this. You didn't do that very well. And it's your fault because you didn't do this and that and the other. You got bad karma. Or you're the kind of person who really, you can't really make it. Or you're fundamentally flawed, or you need to, so you've got this sankhara going on. Why do you have to tell yourself who you are? Why do you need, what's that doing? What, you are, so what do you need this description of who you are? And this is such a strong sankhara, because what it's saying, in some ways, is make yourself adequate, good enough to be with others. So you're as good, you're doing the right thing. And it's measuring against an idea of what people or the world would feel is suitable. So you've got this background idea of the good person. So it's measuring against this notion. And that's a notion. It's not a reality. Yeah. And we measure the time or the day against what it could be like, what it should be like. Maybe a retreat. Retreat means calm, peaceful, clear, mindful, focused. A little bit of bliss now and then. Sort of hovers in the background. This is called a retreat. Oh dear. When you get that one in the back of your mind, somewhere, this isn't it. This sankhara kicks in and measures you in terms of this idea, which does no good at all. Just sets up a critical attitude. Yeah. Negative feeling, unpleasant feeling. So these sankharas, as they get formulated, generate more unpleasant feeling, a negative sankhara. So that goes on. And then we get activated how to change to get rid of that unpleasant feeling. Well, the strategy really is to directly sense the feeling and manage it, manage the feeling directly. This is satipatthana. Directly manage the feeling. Know the feeling. Penetrate through the movements of the mind, the opinions, the perceptions, the memories, the ideas about others, the ideas about what other people think of you, the ideas about what was or could be or should be. This is all just mist and fog, often with a lot of feeling in it. But they're all decoys. They're taking you away from penetrating. Because instead of generating more of these feelings which stimulate more agitation, more sankharas, it just builds up and builds up and builds up. You want the way out. And this is through revealing the feeling, unpleasant. Yeah. And then being able to sustain one's attention, mindful of that feeling as a feeling. Notice the movement. Now, this is where sati, mindfulness, is very valuable, because mindfulness is dispassionate. It's pleasant or unpleasant, as far as mindfulness is concerned, that's not the topic. We want to know, feeling is something that moves us and moves. Pleasant or unpleasant. What we want to know is whether it moves us towards skillful or unskillful states. And we want to know how it moves. And generally feeling starts and then rises quite quickly to a peak of intensity, and then if there's no reaction, no picking up, no grasping at it, no following it, it then subsides. It hits the peak, and the peak point is when the reaction happens. So if we can bear with a feeling when it comes up to its rising and not add more agitation or flurry or interpretation to it, this is very bare awareness. It's void of analysis or complication as the feeling rises, unpleasant. And if you're able to open or stay with sati, so we're aware of feeling is like this, sensing it, the energy of the feeling, instead of moving on to trigger a set of actions, activities, the energy of the feeling then dissipates into awareness. Okay, I'll take you through that again. Yeah? So you get the feeling, which is a sudden surge or a flicker, picks up quite quickly, boom. And at a certain point, it comes to where activation begins. We get reactive, we start thinking about it. Now, if we can return to that again, there's a feeling, but then it comes up, and then perception arises, and then the feeling gets intense. At that particular point, lingering. This is a feeling. What is feeling doing? It's pushing, it's pulling, it's tugging, it's flaring, it's firing. It's doing that. Okay? And widen your awareness. Awareness is the receptive aspect. Awareness just opens and receives. We receive the feeling, and the energy that's there in the feeling then dissipates into awareness. Okay? So you get this kind of, So the energy, feeling, it pushes energy, right? Feeling is the push of energy. That's how we feel something. Something contacts us, a sudden push. That's energy. Yeah. So when it gets intense, it's pushing quite hard. And then we get excited. It speeds up. Velocity. Momentum speeds up. Really feeling extremely excited, agitated, upset, angry, desperate. Getting pretty intense, speeding up. Yeah? That means the energy is peaking. It's coming up to high velocity. So that will then push the button, if you like, on activation. On some sankhara. So okay, now we'll act upon that. It's achieved lift-off, and then it goes into action. Right? This action may be just a thought. It doesn't mean physical action. It means it's like, right, this, that, they shouldn't, I'm not going to do, I am, I'm not, I wouldn't be, why am I always like this? Why do people treat me like that? And then in this activations, we get so lost in the cloud of emotions and thoughts that are creating realities about people and myself and the past and the future and what's right and what's wrong, and it shouldn't be this way and that way. The mind breaks up, the clarity breaks up. We're just kind of lost in this blizzard of emotions and thoughts. And then quite likely one will speak or act upon that. And anyway, if you don't, still you get this really unpleasant saturation of energy, distorted, tangled, unhappy energy saturates your system. And you douse yourself once again in regret, irritation, agitation. The whole nervous system gets saturated. You get another soaking of the same stuff. And it actually has a bodily effect. You feel gloomy, you feel tense, you feel nervous, you feel agitated, you feel depressed. And that state feels bad, so the whole thing starts again. Feeling, and then more agitation, and then more, why am I this? It's so-and-so's fault, it's because of what I was, and how people did this, and I shouldn't be that, and I've made mistakes in the past. Here we go again. Another set of sankharas, another saturation in regret, and so on. I'm hopeless, there's nothing I can do about this, I can't practice at all, I'm failing at more saturation in negative karma, negative sankharas. So important, when you get into these saturation experiences, where you just really are thrown into a whirlpool, that's the time you just got to, wait a minute, where's my body? Like you hang onto a rock somewhere in this whirlpool. Where's the body? Just feel your feet. Feel your feet. Your feet aren't agitated. Feel your back. Back's okay. Relax your hands. Drop your shoulders. Take a breath. This is like the emergency strategy. So you're like throwing something. Here's a lifeline. Get hold of this. Get out of the flood. Get out of the vortex. Come out. Oh, still feel quite, stirred. So sometimes it's like that, and the recognizing, you just even doing that, then we come back into the body and just feel that nervous agitation in the body, in the face, in the skin, in the eyes, in the hands, and just keep extending till you go down to your feet, the floor, your back, your shoulders. Take a breath. Okay. And the waves pass over. Yeah. And you begin to understand something about feeling. When feeling triggers sankharas and emotions. However deeply convincing it is convincing because by and large our world is built out of that. Now, the world we carry in our minds is built out of that. If you think of you say, okay, try to remember your life, and generally you remember the ones where you felt most. Felt happy, felt confused, felt miserable, and so you always, your life, when you think of your life, you experience the peaks and the troughs. Most of it you probably didn't remember at all. Probably 95% of it, just nothing. But you remember that day in July 20 years ago when da-da-da-da happened. So what kind of life is that? It's the track of your sankhara, right? The ones you felt interested, happy, comfortable, warm, or negative. So your life really, your life is really then sankhara. It means conditioned. Your life is the conditioned and activated. And it's not true. It's got some truth in it, but it's a lot more than that. So we miss 95%. So awakening is really getting the 100%. Yeah, there's the passions and the happy times, the miserable times, the confusion, there's the nothing special. And aim in practice really is to keep referring to the places where there was no particularly strong feeling. The mind felt relieved. Of being pushed or pulled. And if we can do anything in terms of awakening and meditation, is to touch that point where the chitta is not being moved or pushed, it's just open. Really good to know that, because this is the bit that we miss. And this is the way or a sign that leads to the deathless, the unconditioned. Not being pushed or pulled. A sign the world in general doesn't recognize. We want the excitement, or we worry about the painful. And that's the world. But the way out is where the mind is not pushed or pulled. So this can occur when the feeling arises, you notice it, acknowledge it, open around it, open awareness. And what is awareness? Awareness is the receptive, that which receives experience. This is an aspect of chitta, heart. It receives, opens to experience. Chitta also reacts and responds, but very fundamental property, it opens and receives. You linger in that and relinquish the reactions, the judgments, worrying why it's there. Stay in that, and the energy of the feeling that goes into this open space and dissipates, dissolves. Oh. Release the feeling. And having done so, you can then review the perception. You know, that which I found to be unfair or improper or stupid or offensive. Was that so? And also, so what? Because if you're not being pushed around by it, it's not an issue, really. Mm. And so these perceptions are based upon measuring. And measuring is the action of mano-vijnana. That aspect we call mind consciousness. Measuring, naming, referring to. It's like a secretary. This is that, that's that. This reminds me of that, that belongs there. That means that, that means that. That's the action of mano-vijnana. And citta just receives those impressions. Now this action of mano-vijnana, measuring, is useful. It's useful. But if we were to really recognize when it just goes to feeling and sankhara with no mindfulness, this is very erratic. We're just coming to blind reactions rather than wise assessments. So you want to let the feeling pass and then wisely assess. You know, somebody said this about you, you didn't like it, you didn't enjoy it, you had an unpleasant feeling. Dare they talk to me about that? Okay, go back to the feeling, intense negative feeling, and before you get defensive or justifying or blaming, let the feeling pass. Quiet down. I think she's right. Yeah. That was a pretty stupid thing to do. Oh, yeah, I got it. Thanks very much. Yeah. Or, no, that's not true. That's not the way it is. And you see clearly without this bias of feeling and the sankharas defending yourself or feeling you're a bad person because of one error or one moment of losing attention. It's just a moment. It doesn't mean you're an evil person. When you get the sankhara, you see, it takes a moment where perhaps there was a loss of sati or carelessness, and it makes a person out of it. Because it just, you know. And then so that makes something a permanent person out of what was a moment. And do we need to have a permanent person? What is such a thing? Is there one? You know, you might imagine, I like to be totally steady, comfortable, calm, composed all the time. That's the real me. That's what I like to be. No, not. So we have this kind of background idea of what we could or should be, which nobody's ever been. You've never been it. Nobody's been it. You have this idea that's what you should be. It's not even an idea, it's a kind of background impression that the thinking mind measures it against this abstract idea. Is it? Looking at that, so you're looking over your shoulder at yourself. It didn't come up so good, did it? Compared with the idea. But the idea lives in the realm of ideas. It doesn't live in the animated living experience. At best, it can give you a sort of a vague, reference point to behavior, not to a person. So wait a minute. And then that reference point has to be continually not held as an idea, but informed, like, by wisdom. Informed by wisdom. So we recognize, look at that again, I refer to that, I can recognize there were certain unwholesome qualities there. So you're referring to something that's actually, you directly know, it's not an idea. Wait a minute, we refer to that again. Yeah, definitely there was some blurring, some hastiness, some, unskillful states. Okay, got it. Then you really talk about navigation errors, right? Needs adjusting there. So you're referring to something that's actually known, rather than theorized. Actually known, because you know the feeling of that when that moved went to an unskillful place. Why is it unskillful? It's good. What's the difference between unskillful and skillful? Well, unskillful, the movement towards the unskillful is generally compulsive. It's a rush. It's got no wisdom in it. There's no moderate, careful, open attention to it. It's a blind blur. It's a reaction. So that's how you know it in the beginning. It's a blind reaction. It cannot be skillful, because it needs to be skillful. It has to have the property of wisdom, which means there's some sense of an open attention to that that's keeping it steady. Right? If that's not there, you maybe feel good, but it moves too fast with no wisdom associated with it. That's how you know it in the beginning. And then how do you know it in the middle? Because it picks up velocity. It starts becoming, it's dragging you. It's like a runaway train. It's dragging you. So you're caught in it. It's got attachment in it. It's got clinging. The mind narrows down and focuses on it, and it's held by it. That's what it's like in the middle. What it's like in the end, train crash. The train goes off the rails. Oh dear. Regret. And the feeling that the mind feels fragmented and weighed down, unskillful. Because the mind is made whole not through this sense of openness. See, the citta is not the sankhara. The citta has sankhara. Sankhara is the movement through it. But the citta itself is essentially just open awareness. And these movements move through it. Now, if we experience a movement of volition, of intention, of motivation, and there's an openness, we sense also there's openness around it, then this is probably not a bad way to begin. It means naturally then you can stop, change direction because you're open. So that's a skillful place to begin. What's it like in the middle? In the middle you can feel the effect of something like a gathering of skillful qualities, such as resolve, such as goodwill, such as clarity, such as faith. You begin to experience good qualities gathering around that. Good, And then in the end, it arrives at somewhere where the chitta is still whole, not broken up, not scattered. Feels steady, feels satisfied. Ah, that's good. Feels satisfied. Wholesome means your mind is left whole, not broken up with regret or doubt. Yeah. So those are definitely, these would be cultivated. Yeah, so if we take a moment of thought of goodwill, for example, very simple, everybody can recognize that, occurs, starts off with some sense of something arises, goodwill feels pleasant. Feels pleasant. Okay? But then you're open to it, letting it, aware of that quality of agreeable, and then you've got some sense of moderate movement on that. It's not not compulsive, sense of just opening to possibility of acting upon this. So the mind opens up. The energy is suffusive rather than incisive. Whereas compulsive actions generally blaze like a lightning bolt. Like that, and blaze like a bolt of lightning. Skillful actions open like the sun at dawn. Just a sense of light opening. And if your joy arises, clarity arises, faith arises, and then, so then in the middle, these other skillful qualities begin to gather around that. So then as that movement of skillfulness arrives, it's a feeling of we've gathered around that faith, mindfulness, wisdom, collectedness. The mind settles and feels whole. Sometimes unskillful states arise with a pleasant feeling. Feeling associated with gratification. Feeling associated with getting rid of what we don't like. That feels pleasant in a certain way, but it's a kind of burning. It's not a warming, it's a burning. Passion. So you send this burning then runs through the heart. Whereas skillful feeling, it's a different kind of feeling. It doesn't burn. It warms. Now there can also be unpleasant feeling which is skillful. Which is we're meeting something that's difficult, we don't enjoy it. But again, what happens? Skillful factors arise around it. Understanding, wisdom, recognition, this is important. It's not pleasant, we have to bear with this. Let's work with this. Skillful factors arise around it. Mind feels strong, mind feels resolute, not hasty, and steady. And we move through unpleasant feeling. When we feel saddened, when we feel despondent, these are not agreeable. You've experienced that. It's not the time to collapse. It's the time to resolve. This is unpleasant feeling. It will make me strong. Skillful factors arise around it. So we understand feeling, we're wise about feeling. We know the power of feeling. We don't take feeling lightly. Feeling's not something you want to play around with, or just get infatuated with, nor is it something you should fear or reject. It's a natural attribute of our intelligence. It's the motivating influence of our life. Don't play around with it. Handle it steadily and begin to discern when feeling moves into sankhara. This is the time to be careful, wise, aware, and carefully handled. Skillful feeling, or feeling that's pleasant, skillful, to be followed through and it arrives at a state of settledness, satisfaction, furtherance, enrichment. And so this is handling this is very significant. Now, if we contemplate our thinking mind, that sort of buzz of thoughts, very simple, practical example. Mental feeling is the strong one. Buzz of thought, shut up, don't want this, stop it, go away. Unpleasant feeling. Okay? So don't get lost in the thought, just notice whether you like it or don't like it. And this feeling may not be that strong, but ask yourself, would you like more of this or less of it? If you think, I'd like less of it, that means it's unpleasant. You can bear it, but it's not something you really enjoy. So, okay, so it's unpleasant. And then when it's unpleasant feeling, notice that will tend to go into a formation, a sankhara of despond or failing or overwhelmed, and then that's what happens. But if it's like feeling, it's unpleasant feeling, feels unpleasant, go to the feeling of it, stabilize yourself in your bodily presence, keep referring to the feeling, not the thought, but what the thought is doing, not the topic of the thought, not the fantasy or the dread, but the feeling that it generates. Hold your attention there, and the peak of that will then decline. It'll rise up, and it will decline. And then you've moved past the push of feeling. Okay? So your thinking mind is bringing up topics that disappoint or frustrate or excite. Don't go onto the topic, go to the feeling. Feeling rises into some sort of intensity. That particularly is the time to pause, to open, and hold steady. Use your body to hold you steady. You do that, the energy of the feeling will gradually dissipate. And the clinging relaxes. And the feeling dissolves. And then you've liberated for that moment. And that's what it's like. Yeah. That's what it's like. So one who really understands and learns to manage feeling has come a long, long way in this Dhamma discipline. Their life has not been wasted. So let's continue our practice. Bodily feeling, mental feeling, and the understanding of it.